Monetizing your personal brand. That is our topic for today. Do you like my series intro? You've probably heard a lot about it, about personal branding. And no, this episode is not about specific details about design or creating catchy slogans or how to define your values. Like, there's so much that goes into it. Really, this episode is about leveraging the heart of personal branding. And that is the heart that transforms your reputation, your business, and yes, your life. I'm sharing my personal journey from working with Latin hip-hop stars to landing dream jobs and clients as an immigrant in the US. And let me tell you, my personal brand opened doors that credentials alone couldn't. But here's the burning question. Can you turn your personal brand into more than just a popularity contest? Can you make it rain, not just in likes, but in actual dollars in your bank account? If you are ready to own your narrative and amplify your impact, stick around. Because today we're not just talking about branding. We're talking about the impact you can make with who you are as a leader. Welcome to Creator to Leader. Are you struggling to connect with your ideal customers online? Are you confused about the most effective way to market your business? If you're ready to become the go-to expert in your industry and stand out from the crowd, this podcast is for you. Hey, I'm Eugenia. That's Eugenia in Spanish, but you can call me E. My mission is to help entrepreneurs stand out online so that they can grow their businesses. I do this through comprehensive marketing strategies, impactful content plans, and storytelling leadership. We both know you are running on caffeine and big dreams, so let's dive right in. I love reading and talking about personal branding. I've noticed that with social media, entrepreneurs have become very aware about it, learning about it. There's podcasts about it and whole programs about it, right? I think that a lot of us have at least a very basic understanding of the meaning, especially after we've been in business for, I would say, at least 6 months. We understand that meaning. Taking ownership of your personal brand means taking ownership of your reputation. And it's very important here that I make the caveat that we cannot control other people's thoughts. So this idea that you can control what people think of you, I think it's a very unhealthy approach to personal branding. If you want to force people into thinking a specific way or having a specific opinion about you, that's a way to burn yourself out, because really people interpret what they see in you based on their own experiences, their own background, their own reality. So that's an extreme or a way of going about personal brand that I really don't like, and I don't think it's healthy. But we can be intentional about the messages those people receive, right? We cannot control how they receive it and what they think, but we can be intentional about the messages we send. And we're humans. And this whole movement of peace and love, no one thinks anything, everything is neutral, I don't know if I agree. I'm not an anthropologist by profession, but, in everything I've seen and studied and just my human experience, I've seen that we are wired to create judgment on other people and just things around us. And I'm not talking about criticism. I'm not saying that people are, criticizing others by nature. I'm talking about judgment, discernment, right? Making judgment is about organizing information to avoid confusion. That's what we want, right? As human beings, we want to understand, we want categories, we need to have things in order, and that's where our judgment comes in, right? Like the whole phrase, use your best judgment. We are judging things around us so we can understand the world around us. So that's why being intentional about your personal brand, or that's where it comes into play. Because it comes into saying, this is the message that I want you to hear. I'm going to make it easier for you because I don't want you to get confused or tired, or I don't want you to have to make your own interpretations because I'm not giving you enough information. And maybe you are in one of two camps. For camp A, maybe you're actively building a personal brand. Maybe you've been posting content and maybe either it doesn't fully click for you and maybe you don't know if it's working, or maybe you've had some success and maybe you've seen it for yourself, right? Maybe you've had some requests for podcast interviews. You've done some great Instagram live interviews and those Instagram lives have helped you grow your audience. Maybe you've attended some events as a guest speaker. The thing is, you already know what it is. You know that it makes such a difference in your growth. And camp B, maybe you don't think you need one because you don't want to be quote unquote famous. And this happens surprisingly with a lot of brands and owners that have companies that don't have their names and they're not the face of the brand. These entrepreneurs think that they don't need a personal brand, right? Or maybe you are not really an extrovert. You're more quiet. So you don't see yourself being in the center of the stage, having thousands of eyes on you. I have a feeling, however, that if you're listening to this podcast, you are closer to Camp A. You are ready to be a leader. Maybe you're not fully ready, like your, school bag in your back, ready to go and learn all about online leadership and building your personal brand, but you have this desire, right? This idea of leading your industry makes you excited and makes you happy. I don't know if this is a silly way to describe it, but these desires that make us happy and just hopeful are just a great sign of things that are in our hearts. And I believe that God put in our hearts so we can have an influence and impact other people's lives, right? Because they are aligned to your purpose. Because you know that your mission and your message is too important to stay quiet, to stay hiding, to continue being a best-kept secret, because you know that the heart you have for people is unique. And that is what makes you excited and happy when you think about it. And as I was reflecting for this episode, I realized that my personal brand started working for me even before I was aware that I was building it. I started working in video production with some of the biggest stars in Latin hip hop because a professor from college saw potential in me to be a production assistant. And then I joined this company and just worked with some of the biggest names. Like the day I met Bad Bunny, I was like, who am I? Give me my red carpet, please. I also was able to get my first real job in the US. And this was a dream job after everything I had been through as an immigrant. I was working for such an amazing nonprofit and a real estate developer in Miami. And that company worked like a family, and I was so blessed to be there. And they also just called me out of the blue because they knew my work ethic and they weren't even sure about what I was doing at the time, but they wanted me on the team. I also was able to land my first podcast production client because of my personal brand. So this client reached out to another person and that person said, I don't know, because that person was asking, my client was asking for a recommendation for a podcast producer. And this other person didn't have a recommendation, but she said, you know what? I've heard and I think this girl is great. And she didn't even know my work. She just knew my personal brand and she referred me to this client, my first client ever. And I continue working with this client nowadays. And also my personal brand helped me land big names such as Jasmine Star as a client for podcast production. And Jasmine is a person that's very inspiring to me because she's the daughter of immigrants and she has built a company that it's a tech company and she has changed the game for the social media space. She's a business leader, a CEO. She can build and grow any company. That woman is a genius. And having her as a client producing her podcast was a dream come true for me. Since then, my business has scaled because of my personal brand. All of my collaborations have happened because of my personal brand. I am an immigrant. I don't have big connections who really just took me under their wing and have introduced me to everyone I've ever worked with. I've met people along the way and I'm thankful for those introductions, but it was all because of my personal brand, my work ethic, just like the way I presented myself. And being honest, coming to the US, I was top of my class. I won an award for my thesis. But in the US, because I came from Venezuela, I didn't come from not even a school here, and I didn't have the connections. All my education, my experience was irrelevant simply because of where I was coming from. I had actually a recruiter recommend that I translated the name of my school, of my college, so it sounded more American. That's a story for another day. And that's why I believe in business so much for minorities, for immigrants, for people wanting to change their generational story. And that's why my personal brand and my relationships have been so important to me. The brand I've built, yes, with my past and just the things I've worked with, and I've been very persistent, but I've also communicated my ethics, my values, and I've been so consistent with what I preach and what I do. And a lot of people don't like me. A lot. People in college, people in my class didn't like me until like I think a year before graduation, when they were like, oh, she's pretty cool. But I was just like so intense. They were like, oh, maybe she's too much for me. But at the same time, I have also had people reach out to me because of my brand. I've built deep, amazing friendships without even meeting in person because of my brand, because they trust in the value I can provide to them. And this is not only my story. I've seen it in my clients too. You know, I've seen them reading comments like, oh, I chose to work with you because of your podcast. So yes, building a personal brand is the best investment you can make. Can you actually make money out of it? Or is it only a feel-good thing to make friends and feel popular? I want us to continue getting into this mindset that people pay for value. Right? So your personal brand becomes valuable because people want access to your brain, right? They admire your thinking. They want access to the way you see the world in your area of expertise. They want that connection to your brain. So that's the value of the personal brand. Your brain, your values, they are admired. They are sought after. A personal brand is like putting a microphone on your platform and your message, and you are amplifying what you stand for. So that's why it has to be authentic. It has to be real. You can get so many opportunities, and this is when we come to specific monetization. We have, yes, leads and clients. I would say that that's the more obvious one, but we also can grow horizontally. That means not necessarily just up to getting more clients with what we're doing, but also horizontally. So new things, speaking engagement, coaching opportunities, consulting requests. A strong personal brand gives you the flexibility as you transition through different stages in life. And I've reinvented myself so many times. And I don't usually over-mention my immigration story, but I need to make this point because it has been the one tool that has helped me build my life and reach the things I've reached. Incredible corporate jobs for multinational companies, working with luxury brands, with huge personal brands, with multi-seven-figure entrepreneurs, with incredible, good people doing good things in the world. I don't have anything overly special in my background, right? I don't come from this elite school. So that's why today, I feel very just inclined to say this, because your personal brand can be more powerful than you realize. And there are 3 things you can specifically do to build your brand in the online space. First, congruency. There needs to be congruency between what you believe and what you do. What are your values? Do you live out your values? Or are you just repeating the things that everyone says, but that you don't actually take action on? Remember the example I gave you from Jeremias. So your actions, getting the results you're preaching about, not just actually talking about, things, but actually being your own best customer, you need to be your own best case study. Also, a great way to build your personal brand online, a personal brand that you can monetize, is through your content. And that's high impact content, not only high value content. Usually, high value content has tips and tricks, how-tos. It is very generic. High impact content still provides value because educational content is needed, but it does it with your unique perspective. Man, I can't say it enough. If you are ready to go to the next step with your personal brand in the online space, you need to have long form content, period, and the end. Start with your newsletter. Literally, you don't need a lot. Of course, there's blogging. I think that's a great resource as well. And that's very simple. Podcasting, which is my favorite. The thing is, you need to have content that allows you to explore and develop your thoughts, going deep. And third, your visibility. Pitch yourself to podcasts, to Instagram live collaborations, guest blogging. Look, I am an introvert, believe it or not, right? I'm not just a chit-chatty center of attention. This point is not natural to me. I'm not a natural networking or a natural social butterfly. So don't overwhelm yourself. You need to have a clear messaging, start connecting 10 minutes a day with potential collaborators. Like, make a cup of coffee, set your timer, 1 or 2 people, reach out. That's it. You will build your muscle up. Once those relationships feel comfortable and genuine, suggest a collaboration, right? That could bring value for both audiences, to be honest. Remember, building your personal brand is not only about being liked or being popular. There is so much transformation, growth, and yes, money into it. That's why I believe in it so much. I am very excited for you. I am excited in the leader that you are becoming in the online space, especially if you are a long-time listener. And if you are a long-time listener before we leave today, or hey, if you're new, welcome to the podcast. I hope you stick around. Please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. If you are on Apple Podcast, simply scroll down to the review section. You choose 5 stars and leave a couple of sentences writing about the benefit you've gotten from the podcast. On Spotify, the 5-star option is right under the name. This is something that really helps the podcast grow and reach more people. New entrepreneurs who are ready to stand out online, take the center stage. Your 2 minutes leaving this podcast review means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your time. I see you soon. Un beso. I hope you loved this episode. If you connected with the podcast in some way, please rate it and review it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That is the #1 way you can support the show. And because sharing is caring, share it with a fellow entrepreneur wanting to become a leader, not just a creator. I am so grateful for you. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a DM over to @Eugenia.woo. That's @EUGENIA.WOO. And if you only send me a microphone emoji, I will know that you stayed till the end. Thank you for listening. See you soon.